My name is Mike Richardson. I'm CEO, founder, and president of publisher, producer of Dark Horse Media, which is now the a big name for our company, Dark Horse Media, which includes Dark Horse Comics, Dark Horse Entertainment, and Things from Another World.
Oh, okay. And I'm Robert Langston, librarian at the Leading Library.
Hi,
And
Robert.
hi, Mike has agreed to come on to our cultural forum, which is now online. And this is the first one. It's an experiment, so let's hope it goes well. And you'll notice I've got the mural behind me.
Well, if you notice, I've got all kinds of stuff behind me.
I saw that and I was getting a little bit jealous of all the,
That's what I do. Some
yeah.
people sit at bars and I read comics and buy toys,
See, I like yours better. I'm not a big fan of bars, but I like reading comics and I
Not
like
that there's anything
toys.
wrong with it. I owned a bar
No.
for 10 years. So can't complain about that either.
Wow. So we're here to discuss your newest book and then whatever else information you want to share. And let me.
Sure.
There.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah, I did too. I finished it yesterday. Fortunately, it was a quick read.
Well, it was an attempt to take a Chinese legend and westernize it in a way that Western audiences could understand and appreciate it.
Oh, have you considered doing a manga version of it, or are you going to leave it as is?
No, actually, I aimed that at younger readers. Not that anybody can enjoy it. I've gotten a lot of great reviews for it. But I am thinking very seriously of now doing a serious version with a whole different second and third act.
Oh, okay. Would it be geared more toward teens and adults, or?
It'd be for adults. It'd be more of an adventure.
An adventure.
A big monster fighting adventure. So I always thought the idea of taking content and all the different ways you can spin it, and I thought anybody who sits down and writes graphic novels has to sit and decide where they're going to go and what the point of it is. And on this one, I was torn between which direction to go as I was doing this. So I decided that I might do a different version of the same story that's more along the lines of, maybe Game of Thrones or something. Not without
okay.
all the political, but I'm talking about with dragons and a heroine and
right.
political consequences and all of that. So same story. But the Neon Monster is the monster that comes down every year, was the legend in China, and takes someone from the village. And ultimately the story goes that a magic man or some kind of mystic man came down and used gunpowder, the red, the color red, and fake dragons, and scared the dragon away. So that's what they do every Chinese New Year. That's why you see all the fireworks and the red and the dragons snaking through the crowds. And that was the legend of where that tradition came from.
And I didn't realize that until actually I read the book, and then all of a sudden, the light bulb moment. I thought, oh, okay, when you see the dragon on the longer sticks going through the crowds and the fireworks, now it all makes sense.
It's scaring away the Neon Monster.
Oh, you probably can't give away in the bigger one if the monster learns to not be afraid. We'll have to wait for the book.
No, it'll be a more dramatic and thrilling and scary version of it.
I can't wait. When you first started writing or got the concept, how long did it take you before you finished the writing and then the novel?
Yeah, I had the idea. I have a list of ideas I have. There's always about 100, and I keep adding to that list. I'll write a paragraph for a couple pages of an idea, and a lot of times I write them, and a lot of times if I'm in a hurry and I can't get to it for a while, I'll give the outline to a writer and have him write it. I have 2 books being written by writers who I've given stories right now, and I've always done that. And it's just a matter of creating content and telling stories, and our That's what our company's built on. You know, we're in. I always look at us as an IP engine that we work internally and with other creators, and we create content. And some of it is really, and most of it for us is really appropriate for graphic novels, comic books. Graphic novel is just a fancy name for a fatter comic book. You know, they're all
Yeah. I
and
use the phrase, go ahead, sorry.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I use the phrase graphic novels at work because it just sounds, you know, more like something a librarian would say, because for the longest time, especially when I started, libraries didn't have comic books.
Yeah, I know. I'm well aware of that.
And then finally, somewhere, the dam burst.
Yeah. So if you're a librarian, you call them graphic novels, but if you were a critic, you'd call it comics lit.
Oh, okay. That's a new term I'll
But
have to use.
yeah, that's not a new term. It's been around for a while. I always thought it was about people were afraid to say they were reviewing comic books.
Because I remember younger, when I was really young, going to Fred Meyer's and they have this rack spindle and, you know, pulling one off and reading it and putting it back on. And
different day, different time, you know.
yeah.
I have one of those racks in my office. Maybe you can see it over there in the very corner.
Not quite. Oh, kind of. Yes, I see it now.
Hey kids, it's comics.
Do you let the kids come in and just stand there and read comics for an hour before you chase them out?
Well, in my office, we give them their own books, not just all kinds of books, comics certainly included in that. And they haven't taken too much. They read them sometimes. They're more interested in, of course, like every kid today, in electronic entertainment.
And that seems to be one of the areas where comics hasn't quite made it, is into like the ebook venue, at least for the library. There's a few sometimes, but not as many as I think we should have.
We're doing pretty well in that area. We have our own storefront for digital comics. We're also at Comixology, and we build our own apps. So we're pretty much everywhere you can read a digital comic. Dark Horse exists. And you know, in Asia, particularly in China, that's people read their comics digitally. You know, that's
okay.
Physical comics have not blown up over there. It's a uniquely American format. Evolved out of newspapers. There was a time when every city had multiple newspapers, and that's where people got their news. And the newspaper strip is what sold those newspapers, if you believe it or not. If you had the #1 comic strip, you had the #1 paper. In fact, if you notice, they still do it in some places. The comic strips were so popular that on Sundays they'd wrap the paper. The comic strip would be on the outside of the paper, and that was to sell the newspaper. So as time went by, a couple of guys got an idea to, as a promotion for Procter and Gamble, if my memory serves me, to take those old news strips, because in those days you printed the comic strip and it was just gone. You know, they just went away. So a couple of guys got an idea to take those and repackage them the cheapest way they could, which was basically taking a sheet of paper, folding it a newsprint, cheapest paper there was, which newspapers are on, folded a certain number of times where it came out to be 32 pages at a specific size, take the magazine glossy news pages and slap around to keep it out of the room and or keep it dry, and then put 2 staples in it. And that was about the cheapest way they could do it. And it was a huge success. So they both decided to get into that business. They say, hey, this would be a great business. And start with publications like Famous Funnies, which was a reprint of all of the comic strips in comic book, what we now call comic book format. You might wonder why they call them funny books or comic books. And you probably never knew, right? Because they're not always funny. They're not comic. But the reason is they came from the comic pages, the comic strips from the newspaper, or the funny pages. They used to call the newspaper strips the funny pages. So these were funny books or comic books. So mostly reprints. They had started to do some original work, but a failed newspaper strip was pitched to a publisher who was going to start um, um, a new title called Action Comics. And
Oh,
that failed strip was Superman. And he picked it up. And of course, that started today. The fact that you think of superheroes when you think of comic books is from that strip. It's Superman was such a sensation at the time. And it's interesting to note that the creators, Siegel and Schuster, were paid a few $100s and then let go a short time later. And one of the one of the types of things that was still going on when I started Dark Horse, and that we determined to change, where creators who brought in works became partners with publishers as opposed to lost the rights to their work.
and that's how the other two large publishers, we won't necessarily name them, that's they pay their people and then they keep control of the content and own the content.
Well, generally, for the two big companies, Marvel and DC, basically they own the work you do, but they do have some creator deals. I don't think it's like ours. I mean, we try to pay the best rate we can, depending on what the sales are going to be, and enter into whatever kind of deal we can work out with the creator to basically license their work is what it amounts to. And then we may take that on and extend that agreement to include films or toys or wherever it goes. Dark Horse has a film division, as you know. Right now we have the #1 show, 1-month show in history for Netflix, which is called The Umbrella Academy, season 2.
I've been streaming that. I just finished it.
Yeah.
And that's you guys?
Yep, that's us.
Wow, that's really cool.
With Universal and with Netflix.
Okay.
And that was conceived of by Gerard Way, who was the front man from My Chemical Romance, the group MCR. And he had called the office, and he had ambitions to write comics. And I finally got together with him, and he pitched the idea. And he threw ideas at me that were completely original. I mean, the Eiffel Tower is a sleeper robot created to destroy Paris. So, it was just a lot of fun. And if you watch the series, you just see how original and fun. And it's not a traditional superhero piece at all. They brought something new. And I think, as fantastic as it is, more grounded in the inner turmoil of a family, which is what they are, a dysfunctional family.
Well, yeah, Klaus is a alcoholic and drug addict and isn't really interested in saving anyone. And
well, he's where he is because, of course, since he's been a kid, he's been looking at dead people. And I guess that pretty much would mess anybody up,
Yeah.
So, Gerard still owns the work, but we're partners with him, and we continue to work with him. And Gabriel Ba is the artist that helped design the characters. Both of them also, we brought them with us when we started the show, and they both work on the show also and contribute. And so that's a good model. Mike Mignola, who does Hellboy, is a great model who has created a whole universe. And on top of that, we've done the movies together. We've done 3 feature films with Mike's work, and 2 feature animated films that not everybody realizes with the original Hellboy cast. So it's been quite a media phenomenon.
Is there going to be a season 3 of Umbrella Academy?
We have no official word yet, but we assume.
Okay.
It's like I say, for the month of August, I believe it charted higher than any Netflix show in history. And also the Nielsen ratings you're aware of finally did a streaming Nielsen ratings.
Caught up.
Umbrella Academy was #1 on that also, by a wide margin, by the way.
That's some good numbers. It would be weird if they didn't re-up it.
Umbrella Academy is one. We have Resident Alien that's appearing soon on USA Network with Alan Tudyk, and it's an amazing show. It's so much fun. I can't wait for people to see it. We've got a number of projects coming. We have Coyote coming on CBS All Access. I believe that's where it's premiering, and we did it with Paramount and Sony, and it's starring Michael Chiklis, and a whole different type of thing, a drama down on the border. And so we have a number of projects going, some that are about to start shooting, and virtually 90% of our films and series have come from the comics, originated as comics.
Then made it to the film. Have you had any that started as a film, then went the opposite way from film to comic?
Well, we do that all the time, not necessarily from us, but I mean,
Yeah.
Star Wars, Aliens, Predator, Terminator, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all started out as movies that we then went and talked to the creators or the studio and turned them into successful comic series. So we still look. Right now, we're doing Witcher, which started out as a video game, now is a successful series on Netflix, and we work with the creators to turn it into a comic series and some amazing collectibles. And Stranger Things is another one. Last Airbender. I mean, these are all big projects that we've taken from film and then translated into comics. Plants vs. Zombies, the video game. Sold millions of copies of Plants vs. Zombies.
So you guys are involved in Stranger Things also?
We're at publishing side of things, yes.
The publishing side of things, okay. Because that's been a favorite show around the home.
Oh yeah, we all love
too.
it. Well, so we look for the things we like, and then we, as pop culture fans, we try to find the things we like, and then find out how to translate them into other formats.
So when I noticed when reading, is it Gia Neon? Is that how it's pronounced? Did I do okay on that?
Gia Neon? Oh.
Gia and the Neon Monster.
Yeah, it's pronounced not quite how it's spelled. It's pronounced a little differently in China, but Gia and the Neon Monster.
It says,
but everybody says Gia and the Neon Monster. That's
it says it's a script. So is this going to be turned into something else rather than? Or what did you say?
You never know. I mean, we've partnered with a company in China and entertainment company, and one of our goals is to create entertainment. So it's one of the reasons that we've done some or are embarking on doing some, taking some of the Chinese legends and turning them into, sort of westernize them a bit so they're relatable on both sides, east and west.
If someone wanted to be a writer or an illustrator, what should they be doing to prepare themselves?
Write and illustrate. That's it. So
that's it.
How people want to be an artist, if you'd like to be an artist, you should carry your sketch pad around and learn how to draw. Don't learn how to draw from comic books. Learn how a car looks and how perspective works. Learn how a building looks in the background. If you don't know perspective, it's not going to come off right. And so learn those basics. The perspective's a tough one. I had a tough time with it, and but it can be learned. And then once you know it, you can play with it. Once you understand, it's just like the human body. You should understand what makes up a human body, the anatomy. Jack Kirby invented muscles that didn't exist. That didn't exist, but because he knew how to draw people, he could do it in a way that worked and looks fantastic,
Yeah, I remember when you came to the Cultural Forum in 2013, and I remember two things from that. One, you told everyone who brought up a drawing, learn perspective.
Yep.
And number two was you talked and looked at every single person's drawings when they came up, and you stayed for like an hour and a half afterwards doing that. And that was really phenomenal. I was really impressed by that.
I like to give encouragement to potential artists. And, some of them you can see may not have the spark that does it. You never know where they can do with it. They might go in a different form of it. Some are naturals, and some can get to be very good by hard work, and, there's those people who look at art and say, we'll tell them, to go somewhere else. I'm not that person. If you love to draw, you should draw, and you should find a way and a style and something that you can succeed in. And it's always going to be hard work. Artists don't have an easy path. Comic book artists, you know, you have to get work, so you have to know your trade. And so you give them the best guidance you can. And the number one thing is, you probably heard me say a number of times, carry your sketch pad around. I used to carry mine around, and you know, I did a lot of other things too. And if I had to do it over, I'd probably start early and focus more on the art than the other things. But I get a lot of satisfaction out of writing stories too.
Do you wish you had more time to write? Because I mean, you run a huge enterprise, so that must take up a lot of your time.
Yeah, my graphic novels are never as good as I could if I could spend a month just working on those, but I do them in my spare time and on airplanes and in between meetings. So, but I've done pretty good. I've gotten some good reviews over the years. Some of my characters have hit the big screen. The Mask was a character I used to draw in something called APA 5, which is, I think, stands for Amateur Press Alliance, where if you're an artist or a writer, this before the internet, if you're an artist or writer, you contribute your material to a magazine. They never had more than 50 members at a time, if I remember, and in a waiting list to get on when somebody'd leave. But Frank Miller was a member of APA 5, for instance, and Paul Chadwick, and Randy Emberlin, and Randy Stradley, and Chris Warner, and dozens. Mark Verheiden started it, who's now a big time film and series writer. I've done a couple of films with him myself, and he started it, and it was for comics. It's a comics APA, and so you'd write and you'd draw, and then you'd get savaged by the other 49 members. So helped you build some thick skin through it all, and it was a good exercise. That's where Dark Horse, I took who I thought were the best people. Randy was a writer, Randy Stradley. So I told him I was going to start a comic book company. So he came and quit his job, and we got a couple other people. Paul Chadwick did a series called Concrete for us, which was a huge award-winning book. We got, and Paul won Best Artist a number of times and so many things. He came out of APA 5. We got Mark Verheiden, who wrote a series called The American. Got Chris Warner, who created Barbed Wire, and that was back in APA 5, Barbed Wire. And who else? Randy Emberlin, who was a Marvel inker for years and an artist himself. We just got a number. Mark Badger, who I took the first, was the first person I hired to do masks stories, and he did his own version of it for a few issues. So all of these people that we started Dark Horse with all were amateurs who wanted to do comics. That when I started the company, I picked the best of them, and off we went. We hope to sell 10,000 copies of that issue, and we sold 50,000. So
when someone draws the Mask, does it bother you, or does it make you kind of look like, oh, that's a little different than I envisioned it?
Not really, because my original drawings of the Mask were a little different, and Mark came in and sort of took them and he gave it his own look. And when we started a comic called Mayhem, I asked Chris Warner to take my original drawing and redo it, and he did, and that sort of became the new look of the Mask. And then John Arcudi and Doug Monkey did the most important series for the Mask that they did for several years. They did several series, and clearly they took it well beyond anyone else, including myself, and they sort of used that. But Doug was an amazing artist, is an amazing artist, and John's an incredible writer, and they did some amazing stories. And no, I was excited about it, you know.
Oh, good.
That they took the idea and went so far with it. But yeah, in the end, it was my character, and still is my character. It's at Dark Horse. And, we have hopes of reviving the character now in film also.
No. When you were running a bookstore in Bend, right? Is that, or comic store in Bend when you first, before you started Dark Horse? Did I
Well,
read that correctly?
I had planned to go into my own business. I'd been working for a furniture company designing boxes and doing instruction sheets, and I ended up being able to design some product and uh, do the work for their convention booth space, design it, and signage and all those kinds of things. And my wife sent me a teddy bear with balloons and said, "You're a dad." And I did what any new father would do. With no money in the bank, I walked in and quit right there. Because I knew my real goal was to start my own business. So I was a basketball bum in those days. I was playing for an AAU team here in town called Claudia's. We used to travel all over and play colleges and so on. A lot of ex-NBA players played with us. And I was also on about 4 or 5 other teams, depending on what night it was and who was playing. So I had sort of a list. If they weren't playing, I'd play for them. If they weren't playing, I'd play for them. So I was working for this other company and playing basketball, and then she sent me that. So I wanted to get away from the basketball, away from everything. And so I told her to, hey, I just quit my job today. You need to quit yours. We're going to move to Bend, Oregon and take the baby down there. And she said, great. And so off we went as soon as the baby. I went down ahead of time in '79 and found a space and found us a place to live and started it out. And we had zero money. Carrie, my wife, was able to give me a credit card because I had no credit. And I had only been out of school a short time then. And so we hadn't really saved any money. But I found a 400 square foot space that the guy thought I was out of my mind that rented it to me. I started the store, and the interesting thing about the store is I tried to make it a store that I liked with the things I liked in it. Had comic books and games and a lot of art, a lot of science fiction and fantasy art, and every science fiction book in print at the time. There was
Wow.
there was a company called F and SF out in New York that kept every science fiction novel in print there, and I'd go down the rack and order them all. And the reason I was able to do that is my wife got me a credit card. It was all on a credit card. Yeah. And so we, every day was better than the last day. Every week was better than the last week. Every month better than the last month. And the most interesting thing is we didn't get that many kids in there. We got kids, but we got a lot of adults, a lot of people like myself, doctors, lawyers who would come in and drop hundreds of dollars when they came in. And it just sort of reinforced the idea that there are people who like this. It's escapist stuff and fun stuff and hobby stuff, but it's something that people learn when they're kids, learn to love when they're kids, and they're either going to like it or they're not going to like it. And if they do really like it as kids, a lot of them carry it all the way into adulthood. So you get very successful people that spend a lot of money to keep that as their hobby.
I've noticed that Things from Another World, does that kind of mimic your first store? Because I know they have books, they have comic books, they also have games and figures. So is that kind of, you think, common for the industry, or is that something you just brought forward from your first store?
I did it from the first store. It was all, I used to call, because I wanted stuff that was fantasy based. I wanted it to be a special kind of a store. So we had the comic books, we had the science fiction and fantasy. I'd heard about this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. I can't remember where I heard because nobody really knew much about it. I used to call Gary Gygax, who was the creator of it. And I'd say, I need some copies of the game. And he said, okay, I'll mimeograph them tonight. And you'd get these
Nice.
mimeographed instruction sets in like a plastic baggie and dice with some dice. And then we started selling the dice, which was a huge thing. And we started expanding to other related kind of fantasy games because when Dungeons and Dragons hit the market, the first time I saw it in a store, it was at a store called G.I. Joe's, which is out of business now. but I saw a huge Dungeons and Dragon display, and that's the first time I ever saw it in a store down in
Oh,
Bend, Oregon. I
and
hadn't.
GI Joe's, which was more of a sports store than a.
Well, they had sort of evolved from that, but down in Bend, that's what they had, that's where it was, and there was a big like bin of Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't know how it got there or why it was there. It was, and so we started doing lessons, giving people lessons. We got, not me, we got players that would come in and after hours bring a bunch of people so we could sell them all the assorted updates and dice and all of that. And at one point I kept opening stores until we had, well, at one point we had 12 stores in 3 states.
Oh,
And then we opened, started the online store, which outgrossed all the brick and mortars almost immediately. So we stopped, the neighborhood stores sort of went away because, the what had been a lifeblood to the company at one time was now better, larger locations or focus our, we didn't have enough money to do everything. So we decided to put our focus on the online store, which is where we.
I hope you keep the Milwaukee one because it's just
Oh, yeah.
walking distance from here, and I used to like to go down there and pick out my graphic novels. Now I order them and go in and pick them up real fast before I can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're not going out of retail. In fact, we were thinking of in the early stages of planning a dark horse store in downtown Portland. Big, certainly not as well financed, but our version of the Nike store for dark horse, with all the games and all the toys and all the books and the videos of all the movies and all of that, and lots of fun stuff, statues and of our characters and stuff. But that's probably not going to happen now.
Not for a while. And just for the record, I still have my 20-sided dice from 40 years ago. So, and I know exactly where they are.
The more sides they put on those dice, I couldn't believe. I mean,
I stopped at
they
20.
went well, yeah, they went well beyond 20.
Hold on, I've got questions here, and are you going to do other books based on folklore? I mean, do you have the idea of doing that, or is that just one of your
I did,
hundreds of ideas? Sorry.
yeah, I did one 47 Ronin before this one a couple of years ago, and actually it was put on the big list, National Library Association must read for teens list, which I actually did it with Kazuo Koike, who created Lone Wolf and Cub, and I had him as my editor who oversaw the story to make sure I didn't misrepresent the idea of the 47 Ronin and what they stood for. And, there were elements, the Bushido Code was a big part of it. But there's arguments about what that means. And the story isn't exactly that. I invented some characters to get across certain ideas in the story, but the story is basically based on a real story, and I always thought that it showed a level of honor and commitment. The fact that Asano had to be revenged. It was his honor. He had to be honored, and these people, once they avenged him, went willingly to their deaths as a result. And I thought that was quite a sacrifice for honor, So tried to get a lot of that into the story, and particularly from the story of the 48th Ronin, as he's sometimes called, who I used him to package the story, because there was a Ronin. I've been to the graveyard in Japan where the 47 Ronin are buried, and there's the tale of the extra Ronin who insulted one of the 47, spit on him because he was such a disgrace, because they allowed themselves to be debased while they were pretending that they had given up the life of the samurai. And when he found out why they were doing it, he went to their graves and committed seppuku. at the gravesite. So I used him sort of to package to tell the story before he committed that act. So there's a lot of history, and there's a lot of the movie stuff in it. I mean, there's a play that was done right after the event, which caught the Japanese attention, and there's been countless movies done. And look, I put the story together, my story together. It always drives me crazy because I say very clearly, it's the legend of the 47 Ronin. And then, you'll always get somebody who said, Asano didn't go to this day, he went this day, or, whatever I'm saying. But one of the reasons I got it out there is because there is a movie, The 47 Ronin, which I guess is a fine technical piece. I don't know. But there were not dragons or witches or magic in the original story.
Right.
And if Gaijin had landed in Japan during that time, he would have been pushed back to sea or beheaded or made a slave. He wouldn't have been the leader of samurai, So Keanu, I love. I met Keanu, had a project with him. He's a great guy, great actor, but I couldn't take that story, so I had to hurry up and get my
Years
version.
out.
Actually based on the real event.
Do you have a favorite of your books that you've written?
I like them all. I mean, they're all story ideas that you work hard on. I mean, Father's Day is one about a father and daughter, two extreme circumstances, reuniting. He was a hitman for a mob family who turned his back on him, went into hiding in order to protect his daughter. And 20 years later, when his wife died, she tracks him down, and now they're after the two of them. And while they're on the run, they learn to go through all the stages that a father and daughter might have gone through over a lifetime. And he's become a pacifist in those 20 years. Her not so much. So I thought it was a fun book. I like Echoes a lot. It's a story of someone we all think about if we could go back. It's about a story about a boy who watched his mother be abused and ultimately murdered. And through a strange, weird weather event is put backwards in time and gets the chance to go back and save his mother. That's what he's going to do. He ends up back when he can go protect her from this guy. And when he has the chance to kill the guy in the diner where she works, he sees himself and then pauses and decides to mentor himself and take himself to go do the things he never got to do. So if that's a twister, and in the end he gets to save his mother. But it's a twisty thing because when you mess with time, there's a great scene that I liked writing where he sits with an old mechanic and they talk about things that we can't explain, and you can't always. There's things we just can't ever explain why they happened or when they happened, but we just have to accept them and try to make the best out of whatever's left. So, those little moments when you can find to put in a book, I think is, for me, that's satisfying.
Well, and speaking of the time, you saw that in Umbrella Academy when they went back and still were messing things up because,
Well, anything with time travel, I love. And so that's Gerard. This is his imagination, and Gabriel. And, a project that I wrote years ago with Mark Verheiden, my friend Mark Verheiden, I told you, was Time Cop. And it's still another idea to go back and save his wife who was murdered years ago. And he gets to go back and try and save her. He's not supposed to, but he does. And meanwhile, he finds out that it was the fact that they're actually coming back to kill him when she died all those years ago to keep him from stopping them from what they were doing. So it's, again, it's fun to play with time travel. I love it. I have other time travel stories that I want to mess with your head.
Do you have a favorite comic book? Not the ones that you've written, or a favorite character?
Yeah, I have a lot of them. I mean, I'm going to stick to Dark Horse books right now.
Well, yeah.
Matt Kent, Jeff Lemire, Frank Miller, Mike Mignola, um, Paul Chadwick. I mean, a lot of our artists, Jeff Darrow, these are artists and writers that I've gone after because I did like their work in the first place. So if they're at Dark Horse, generally, it's because I like what they're doing. So, you know, we all have our favorites. Right now, I'm collecting Superman, as you can see back there, in
Yes.
both comics and I'm trying to put a run of Superman together, the original one. So I have to work for years to try and pay for it. You know.
So no plans to retire just yet until after your
Oh,
Superman
I've
collection.
no interest in retiring. None. Why? I'd go nuts. And not only that, my wife would throw me out if I on the house not doing anything. You know. So. No,
Just
I
sitting
start
there.
projects. I wait for the time say, oh, if I can just get to the 5th, then I've got a day off. And then on the 5th, I'll start a new project. So it's the way it is.
You're always on the move and never stopping your creative process.
There's a lot to do. Got plenty of time to sleep, right? That final, that final sleep. I want to get as much done in before that comes as I can.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that now that I've gone over 60, it's,
I've been over for a while, so just stay healthy. I work out every day, and I keep writing. I'm starting to draw again a little bit. I want to. I was asked to do a painting for one of the cherries out here, and I said, "Yeah, that'd be fun." And I haven't painted for years. I mean, not since I started Dark Horse. And painting used to be a big part of my life. I have the canvases right in our apartment living room, and just all the spare time. So I thought, yeah, that'd be great. I'll paint something. But then when I tried to paint, I realized, oh, I forgot about this and I forgot about that, and it was a mess. So finally, and I had to have it in the next day, and I thought, geez, I can't do that because I was expecting just to do some quick something. Couldn't do it. I mean, I can still take a pencil and paper, but they wanted a painting, and so I had my kids just do handprints all over it. It was the only thing that didn't sell at the charity thing. So I learned my lesson. You can't. I tried to pull a fast one on that one. Didn't work.
It didn't work.
Didn't work.
Um, when you did paintings when you were younger, were they also of science fiction and fantasy themes, or was it more like?
Yeah, a lot of things. I was when I was in art school. I was impressed by Luca, if you know who he is, and his Sarah Bernhardt drawings and paintings. Uh, Yugoslavian, I think he was Yugoslavian, but you've seen his stuff a million times if you saw his work. He always had the lady with the cigarette, or
Oh, okay.
amazing, and he was huge at the time. Art Nouveau and Art Deco, both. I was balancing both those two styles, and so I like that. And you know, I was a Renaissance fan. I mean, I studied the Renaissance hard. I love Michelangelo. Um, I always thought, and I've seen other people say it, that's probably why it's in my head. Um, he would have been a comic. If you look at his art, you realize he would have been a comic book artist today, with his pencils and his figures and his idealized poses. And um,
Yeah.
these days, he would have just gravitated toward the comic book business, which is where the artists that do that often go. And I loved Frank Frazetta. I don't know if he was
Yeah.
the art god to a lot of us. And I got to know Frank and work with Frank, so that was very exciting. It's been the best part of this that a lot of the people I really admired, I got to know. Will Eisner, who was a hero and a role model for me because not only did he write and create comics, he also owned the company that did it. So we used to get in a lot of discussions about the business and his thoughts on it. And what was really uh, exciting to me is he was always curious and always curious why I did things the way I did because he was always trying to learn. So even though he had so much more experience, he would ask me um, about why I was doing this, what I thought about that, and just taking it all in. I was lucky enough, I got to have him and Harlan Ellison here for the Lake Oswego
Wow.
Festival of the Arts. And I got them both there. And we did 2 shows where we sat up on stage, the three of us, and talked. And they sold out, both of them, and it was pretty amazing. They have them.
Man.
Harlan sat in the lobby of the Art Center in Lake Oswego, and or the Theatrical Center. I don't know what the official name is, but he sat in the lobby and wrote his next book on a typewriter for us while he was talking.
Do you remember what your first book was that you read that got you going down the science fiction fantasy road?
Well, I could read before I went to school, and my mom had me reading early. And my mom used to bring comics home, and I had to know what was in them. I could look at the pictures, but I had to know. So she'd buy me workbooks and sit with me, and I was a good reader when I went into first grade. And did an interview one time where they asked me how I was in school, and I said I was generally bored. And they said I was probably pretty bored until I got to college, when I found out nobody's going to hold your hand if you didn't work hard. They didn't care. So
Right.
that was my wake up schooling. But before that, I could get by without doing much study. I didn't have to work that hard. But first day of school, and I attribute that because I could read. I could always read. I read way ahead of my level. And the first day of school, I told them, they asked me, when did my boredom start? I said, the first day of school. I said, we went in, we went to the first day of class, first grade, and they passed out Fun with Dick and Jane. And I read it while they passed that out. It took me 3 minutes to read the whole book. And then I had to sit in that class for however long, I don't remember how long, it seemed like eternity, while everybody else was learning how to read it. So when they asked me, well, when did your boredom start? I said, probably the first hour of the first day of my first minute of class. So
Did you find yourself trying to draw capes onto Dick and Jane to make them into superheroes?
no, but I used to draw all the time. I used to draw all kinds of things, and certain superheroes, one of the things, space things. I did my own neighborhood newspaper strip, comic strip that I draw. There's a paper called the Enterprise Courier that would wrap their paper in newsprint, and it was wider than the Oregonian or the Journal. So I'd go up and they'd wrap it. So when they cut the wires and took the papers, the paper boy would leave the white paper. So I'd always go up and collect it. When I get enough of it, I'd draw a strip with my own creation characters, and then I'd recopy it like 3 or 4 times, the same strip, trying to draw them exactly the same. Then I'd go sell them in the neighborhood up and down 35th Street. Mr. Hill, who was across the street from me, called me the J. Paul Getty of 35th Street. That was his nickname for me.
Now, I can't remember, did you grow up in Milwaukee or?
I came when I just turned 5, I believe. 1955. I could have been 4, turning 5, yeah. So I had to wait a year to get to school, and I was eager to get in. And that's when my mom had always worked with me about reading, but she really, because I was so eager to get to school, she'd buy me all these workbooks, and we'd do them all the time. And, they were pretty easy, and we learned to read pretty fast. I remember I think it was when I was in 3rd grade, I got a book because I had seen at the Victory. So I don't know if you remember, so the theater downtown used to be called the Victory Theater.
Oh,
At
that I
Denver.
don't.
Yeah, a veteran of the war, and he used to be there all the time. The guy that I can't remember his name, but I used to know it. But anyway, every Christmas in downtown Milwaukee, they'd have free movies on the weekends, the week before Christmas. And the reason was the parents could drop their kids off and go to a movie while they went shopping. So the merchants would. So, yeah, so every year there was something. When I was in the 3rd grade, I'm pretty sure, um, they showed The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, which I sat in that movie and I thought, how did they know I would love this movie so much? So then I started on a whole drawing jag, and I used to, um, um, I became this crazy movie fan after this. Luckily, I got to, I was really very privileged and just lucky to get to know Ray Harryhausen, who created those movies, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts, and just all the movies I loved as a kid. And I got to know him and work with him later on. And he actually came to me at the San Diego Comic-Con one time, and he said, Mike, I'm looking at all of the things you do at Dark Horse. He said, why? What's the reason? And I said, you really want to know? And he said, yeah. And I said, Ray Harryhausen. Do Ray Harryhausen. So that's one of my favorite moments ever. But anyway, I forgot what the question was.
I did too, because, senior moment. And it probably wasn't important if I can't remember it.
Well, it got me off on a good memory. Ray was a great guy. You meet, so when you're a generation or two behind some of these people that you so admire and you get to know them, and they pass away, you get to know them well, and then they pass away. It's you keep losing these heroes and these. Okay, you just went on Zoom. Anyway, I got to meet Muhammad Ali, who is my all-time sports hero. Right now, I'm trying to get I'm trying to get something going with Bill Russell, my all-time basketball hero, Ray Harryhausen, Jack Kirby, just so many of these great people that I grew up admiring that I've gotten to know because of comic books, basically.
Yeah, and comic books are universal. I mean, pretty much everyone loves them. Either they admit it or they don't.
Well, the rest of the world doesn't look at comic books quite the same as we do in America. In America, we look at them as this third-rate, low-budget, literary junk, But it's not true. I mean, comics for a long time have been very serious. I think probably in the early years, there was reason to think that. There was the 40s, a lot of stuff just being cranked out. Right now, serious writers, serious artists are are writing serious pieces of work, and the fact that it's panel to panel and that it's a combination of words and pictures does not make it any less legitimate than any other form of communication. In fact, I think in a lot of ways it makes it more personal and more powerful. I think that, some of the books today, there's a lot of biographical material in comics. I think years ago, Barefoot Jen, if you've ever read it, and some of those books, Japanese book that really touched me years ago. But you can find all the adventure, everything, and you really go into a world when you're really engrossed in a comic or a graphic novel, as they like to call them. I call them all comic books, but I have to differentiate.
Not for me. I call them. I go home and I tell my wife I'm reading a graphic novel. She goes, "You mean you're reading a comic?" Yeah, I am.
That's what
it's the truth
of it. A mouse won a Pulitzer Prize. So
I think I'm out of questions.
Okay. I hope I gave you some interesting answers.
Oh, you did. I think this is fantastic. I really appreciate everything you do for the community and everything you've done for the library. I mean, you guys have been fantastic.
Well, we have to do some more for the library, don't we?
Yes, I think the librarians need to be paid more. So if you want to drop a bag of cash off.
Yeah. Well, how about if I prod our local decision makers?
Yes, do that too.
I'll support the ones that support the libraries. How's that?
That's a good deal. That's all I can ask.
And certainly we're happy to put Dark Horse Books over there anytime.
Oh, and I'm happy to buy them and bring them over. So
Oh, you know, I used to bring boxes over them years ago,
yeah,
and I sort of stopped doing it. I need to get back on the ball, you know.
right now we can't take donations, but when we
Oh, really?
can, yeah.
Because you're limited in space, is that it?
Oh, well, our friends, yeah, limited in space, limited in the ability to handle them and store them and take them out because our friends can't go through them and look through them. They're not coming into the building. So right now we're very limited.
Oh.
But you'll be the first people I contact
Well,
when
I've got
we're.
warehouses full of them, so they're not going.
I always loved it when the boxes, because then I start going through them and pulling them out and looking at them, and
Yeah.
it gets
Well,
a little addictive.
there's some important book, graphic novels that have come out, important work that's come out. So you're missing out on 'em. You know, we're doing the complete Dark Horse archive at Portland State Library,
Oh,
Portland State University, and they're archiving the complete Dark Horse. And it turns out that it's uh, one of the most visited places in the library is the section that they have our books. It's a huge
do you think
success.
they'll digitalize it?
Well, we're already digitalized. I don't know, you know, it's different. On some books, I'm sure we will offer that, you know. But are you saying, will they digitalize it for
Their collection, yeah.
posterity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I mean, we already have it digitalized, so we have that
Oh, you
all.
have everything digitalized for Dark Horse?
Yeah, well, we do, all our books are digital now too.
That's true.
We have the Dark Horse Digital. You should take a look. You can get I'll give you a passcode. You can see the complete Dark Horse library.
Wow. So you even went back into the catalog and got the things before.
Yeah, we've gone back. We haven't gotten everything 100%, but we've gone back for a lot of our books. Yeah. If it sees print, whether it's new or old, it's been digitized.
And I'll check out that library as soon as I'm done here.
Right.
Thank you very much again.
Okay.
And
Pardon?
I said, have a good evening.
I'm going to go watch the Yankees, and I'm hoping that they will win another game.
Okay, that's a bad note to go on, but we'll just leave it there.
Oh, you know, I have to say that I have a whole room of Yankee stuff, and I fly to New York for Yankee games. So I just want you to know that. So
thank you for the pain. It hurts right here.
okay.
Have a good
Great
evening.
to talk with you. Bye-bye.
Bye.